Jo Chamberlin was 31 years old when she committed one of the worst offenses to her boyfriend's family. Jo Chamberlin met Roger Lee Gillett in Oregon, where she was born and raised. They lived together briefly before moving to Russell, Kansas with Gillett's relatives. Chamberlin had drug problems and both were involved in methamphetamine manufacturing. In early March 2004, Chamberlin and Gillett drove from Kansas to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. They stayed with Gillett's cousin Vernon Healet and his girlfriend Linda Hensel. On March 6, they wrecked their car following Healet and Hensel. Henselman promised to report it to insurance and share the money, but never did. Later that month, tension grew when Healet and Henselman suggested the couple find their own place. Gillett wanted to stay. After an argument, Chamberlin left on foot. When she returned, Gillett became violent with Henselman about the insurance claim. Gillett ordered Chamberlin to get his firearm from under the mattress. They cut the phone line so no one could call police. Gillett discharged the weapon inside the house to scare them. He beat Healet trying to get the combination to his safe. Gillett also sexually assaulted Henselman with a beer bottle. Chamberlin became impatient and told Gillett to unalive them and leave. Gillett struck Healet in the head with a hammer while he sat in a chair. He also slashed Healet's throat. Henselman was left injured on the floor for hours, still breathing. Chamberlin suggested they suffocate her. They bound Henselman's hands behind her back. Chamberlin placed a plastic bag over her head but couldn't complete it. When she returned from going outside, Linda passed away. Chamberlin helped clean up and move the bodies. She held bags while Gillett dismembered Healet's body. They loaded both bodies into a freezer and transported it to Kansas in Healet's pickup truck. The freezer was plugged in at the Gillett farm. Kansas authorities found the bodies on March 29, 2004 during a methamphetamine investigation. Both offenders were arrested immediately. Chamberlin gave detailed confessions during 5 separate interviews with KBI officers. Chamberlin's trial began with her defense trying to suppress her statements. They failed. During the 3-day trial, the jury heard horrific details. Dr. Donald Hodgman performed the autopsies. He testified that Henselman suffered at least 69 separate injuries from blunt force trauma, cutting, stabbing, and suffocation. Healet died from skull fractures that damaged his brain. 2 jail inmates testified that Chamberlin showed no remorse. She only expressed sorrow about being caught. One inmate said Chamberlin wished she had disposed of the bodies better by feeding them to hogs. Chamberlin did not present any evidence during her trial. The jury found Chamberlin guilty on 2 counts of capital offense. During sentencing, she called character witnesses, including former jailmates and a court-appointed psychologist. She wanted to avoid the death penalty. The jury recommended death. Chamberlin was sentenced to death. 1 year later, in 2007, Roger Lee Gillett also received the death penalty. Chamberlin remains on Mississippi death row today. Willie Godbolt was 35 years old in 2017. He lived in Mississippi and had been in trouble with the law many times before. His record included armed robbery, aggravated assault, and other violent offenses. Godbolt was separated from his wife Sheena May, and they had custody problems with their children. On Memorial Day weekend, Godbolt went to his estranged wife's family home in Bogue Chitto, Lincoln County. He wanted to take his children with him. Sheena May and her family refused to let him have the kids. This made Godbolt very angry. The argument got heated quickly. Godbolt had brought a firearm with him. When Lincoln County Sheriff's Deputy William Durr arrived to help with the domestic dispute, Godbolt discharged his weapon. Deputy Durr was unalived instantly. Godbolt then turned the weapon on Sheena's family members. At the first location, Godbolt caused the deaths of Jordan Blackwell, Austin Edwards, and Sheila Burridge. He also unalived Brenda May, who was Sheena's mother. The individuals affected were just trying to protect the children from a dangerous situation. Godbolt was not finished. He drove to another house in Brookhaven, where more family members lived. There he caused the deaths of Barbara Mitchell, Takara May, and Farrell Burridge. The crime spree lasted 7 to 8 hours across 2 towns. Police finally captured Godbolt after the longest incident in Lincoln County history. 8 innocent people had passed away because of one man's anger over child custody. A deputy trying to do his job was among those unalived. Godbolt went to trial for capital offense charges. Multiple witnesses saw what happened. The jury found him guilty on all counts for unaliving Deputy Durr, Jordan Blackwell, Austin Edwards, and Sheila Burridge. Godbolt received the death penalty. For the other 4 individuals affected, he got life sentences. Godbolt now sits on death row at Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman. His anger over losing his children cost 8 people their lives. Willie Manning was 24 years old when he became connected to a case that would put him on death row for over 30 years. On December 11, 1992, 2 Mississippi State University students were found deceased on a country road near Starkville. John Stephen Steckler, 19, and Pamela Tiffany Miller, 22, were dating and had been out together that night. At 2:15 a.m., a motorist found Steckler shot in the back of the head by the side of the road. Miller's white Toyota Mr. 2 was found nearby with her body inside. She had also been shot. Both students had been robbed. Missing from the scene were Steckler's watch, gold necklace, and Cathedral High School class ring. Items stolen from Steckler's car included a CD player, silver Huggy, leather bomber jacket, and $10 in change. The investigation focused on Manning after his cousin Earl Jordan claimed Manning had confessed to the shootings. Another man, Frank Parker, said he overheard Manning talking about disposing of evidence. Based on these statements, Manning was arrested and charged. Manning was tried in 1994 for capital offense while engaged in robbery. The case relied heavily on testimony from Jordan and Parker, along with hair and ballistics evidence. Manning maintained his innocence throughout the trial. The jury found him guilty and sentenced him to death. Over the years, Manning's case has faced serious challenges. In 2015, he was exonerated of a separate double offense after the key witness recanted, saying his testimony was coerced. For the Steckler-Miller case, scientific evidence that helped convict him has been questioned. The FBI has offered to retest evidence. Manning remains on death row as of 2025, now 56 years old. He has spent more than half his life in a correctional facility. His legal team continues to fight his conviction, claiming the evidence was flawed and witnesses lied. The case shows how 2 young lives were taken and how one man's life has been forever changed by a conviction he claims is wrong. Timothy Ronk was 29 years old in 2008. He lived in Biloxi, Mississippi, with his girlfriend Michelle Crate. Kate was 38 years old and worked to support herself. Arg had been in trouble with the law before and was on probation at the time. On August 26, 2008, something terrible happened at Crate's home in the Woolmarket community, near Biloxi. Ronk and Crate got into some kind of argument that day. Nobody knows exactly what started the fight, but it ended in violence. Ronk stabbed Crate multiple times with a knife. The individual affected suffered many wounds from the attack. She was defenseless against Ronk's anger. After causing Crate's death, Ronk made a decision that would make his crime even worse. Ronk set Crate's house on fire to try to cover up what he had done. He wanted to destroy the evidence of his crime. The fire burned through the home while Crate's body was still inside. Ronk thought the flames would hide his actions. After starting the fire, Ronk took Crate's belongings and left the scene. He stole her credit card and used it at a local store. Ronk also took other items from Crate and gave them to a woman he knew in Florida. He disappeared after the fire started. Biloxi police responded to the house fire and found Crate's body in the charred ruins. The autopsy showed she had been stabbed to death before the fire started. Investigators quickly figured out the fire was set on purpose to hide the offense. Police tracked Ronk down through Crate's credit card usage. They found him and arrested him. During questioning, Detective Chris DeBack said Ronk broke down and confessed to everything. He admitted he stabbed Crate and set the house on fire. Ronk went to trial in Harrison County in 2010. He was 31 years old by then. The jury heard about his confession and the evidence against him. They found Ronk guilty of capital offense and armed robbery. The jury sentenced Ronk to death for the capital offense. He also received 30 years in prison for the armed robbery. Ronk has tried to appeal his sentence multiple times, but the Mississippi Supreme Court has rejected his appeals. He remains on death row today. James Cobb Hutto III was known as the Hitman because he was a fighter. Hutto was 35 years old in 2010. In September 2010, he drove to Clinton, Mississippi to visit his ex-girlfriend. He went to the Baptist Health Plex, where he met Ethel Winstead Simpson. She was 81 years old. Hutto started talking to Ethel at the fitness center. He acted friendly and gained her trust. Ethel thought he was her friend. Hutto and Ethel even went to a casino together in Vicksburg. Security cameras caught them on video. Ethel looked happy. This was the last time anyone would see Ethel alive. What happened next was brutal. Hutto used his fighting skills against an 81-year-old woman. He hit her, he kicked her, he stomped on her. Ethel couldn't fight back or defend herself. Hutto beat her until she passed away. An 81-year-old grandmother was taken from life by someone she trusted. After Ethel was deceased, Hutto put her body in a grain container. He drove to a pig farm in Edwards, Mississippi and dumped it there. He thought no one would find her. People noticed Ethel was missing. Police found the casino security footage showing Hutto with Ethel. They tracked him down and arrested him. The case went to trial in 2013. Prosecutors showed the jury the casino video and explained how Hutto befriended Ethel just to hurt her. The evidence was clear. The jury decided Hutto should be sentenced to death. Hutto was sentenced to death and sent to a correctional facility. He filed appeal after appeal, claiming his trial wasn't fair. In 2017, the Mississippi Supreme Court kept his death sentence. He tried again in 2019 and 2024. The court said no both times. In January 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his case. This meant Hutto had no more chances to appeal. His death sentence was final. Hutto is still on death row waiting for his execution. Ethel Simpson's family waited 15 years for justice. This case shows how dangerous it can be to trust strangers. Ethel was just trying to stay healthy. She trusted the wrong person. Hutto saw her as an easy target and planned to hurt her from the moment he met her. Joseph David Hurd was 41 years old and lived in Gulfport, Mississippi. He was married to Haley Lane Hurd, who was 24 years old. Haley had a 2-year-old son named Hayden Lee Bataille. Joseph became Hayden's stepfather when he married Haley. On December 27, 2021, something terrible happened in their home in Biloxi. It was early morning. Hayden was just being a normal 2-year-old. He was trying to get a juice box from the kitchen, but Hayden was taking too long. This made Joseph angry, very angry. Joseph started hitting Hayden. He punched the little boy in the mouth. He punched him in the head. Hayden started crying, but Joseph didn't stop. He kept beating the 2-year-old. Haley watched this happen. She later told police that Joseph wouldn't stop even when Hayden was crying and hurt. The beating was so brutal that Hayden passed away. A 2-year-old child was taken from life because he took too long to get a juice box. Let that sink in, a juice box. At 6 a.m. that morning, Haley called 911. She told them Hayden might have drowned in the bathtub. She lied. She tried to cover up what really happened. Hayden was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. He was already deceased. When doctors examined Hayden, they found horrible injuries. The little boy had bruises all over his body. He had a broken bone. Medical experts said they had never seen a child who had suffered so much harm. Police arrested both Joseph and Haley in January 2022. Haley eventually told police the truth about what happened that morning. She testified against Joseph at his trial. The trial happened in May 2024. It only took 4 days. The jury heard about the brutal beating over a juice box. They saw the evidence of Hayden's injuries. After just 45 minutes, they found Joseph guilty of capital offense. The next day, the jury sentenced Joseph to death. Judge Larry Bergius looked at Joseph and said, "God have mercy on your soul." Haley was sentenced to life in a correctional facility for her role in Hayden's death. This case shows how innocent children can be hurt by the adults who are supposed to protect them. Hayden was just 2 years old. He was learning to walk and talk. He deserved love and care, not violence over something as simple as getting a juice box. Caleb Carrothers, also known as Caleb Carrothers, was 27 years old in 2009. He lived in Oxford, Mississippi in Lafayette County. Carrothers had a history of getting into trouble with the law. He was known around town as someone who caused problems. On July 11, 2009, something terrible happened at the Clark family home near Oxford. Frank Clark lived there with his son Taylor Clark and his wife Tonya Clark. It was a quiet Saturday night. The family was just at home, not expecting any trouble. Carrothers showed up at their house. He was there to rob them. He brought a firearm with him. When Carrothers got inside, things went wrong fast. He started shooting the family members. Frank Clark was shot and passed away. His son Taylor Clark was also shot and taken from life. Tonya Clark was shot too, but she survived. She was badly hurt but lived through the attack. A father and son were deceased. A wife and mother was left wounded and traumatized. After the shooting, Carrothers ran away. Police started looking for him right away. They knew who did it. The whole community was scared. People locked their doors and worried about their safety. On Friday morning, July 17, 2009, Carrothers turned himself in to Lafayette County Police. He knew they were going to catch him. He surrendered at the police station. Police charged Carrothers with capital offense for both deaths. They also charged him with aggravated assault for shooting Tonya. The prosecutors said this was robbery gone wrong. Carrothers was also charged as a habitual offender because of his past incidents. The trial happened in 2011. The jury heard about how Carrothers shot 3 people during a robbery. They learned about Frank and Taylor being taken from life. They saw how Tonya survived but was badly hurt. The jury found Carrothers guilty on all charges. They sentenced him to death for the 2 capital offenses. They gave him life in a correctional facility without parole for shooting Tonya. On May 20, 2011, Carrothers was officially sentenced to death. He was sent to death row to wait for his execution. Carrothers has been trying to get a new trial ever since. He claims his original trial wasn't fair, but the courts have refused to overturn his conviction. He remains on death row today. This case shows how robbery can turn deadly. Carrothers went to steal from the Clark family, but he ended up taking 2 lives and destroying a family forever. Charles Ray Crawford was 28 years old in 1993. He lived in Tippah County, Mississippi. Charles Ray Crawford had already been in trouble with the law. He was facing trial for aggravated assault and rape charges. His trial was set to start on Monday, February 1, 1993. On Friday, January 29, 1993, Charles Ray Crawford made a terrible decision. He broke into the home of Christy Dennis Ray in Chaley Beat, a small community near Walnut, Mississippi. Christy was only 20 years old. She was a student at Northeast Mississippi Community College. She had bright plans for her future. Christy had gone to visit her mother, Mary Ray, at the bank where she worked around 12:30 p.m. When Mary got home later, she found Christy's bedroom completely torn apart. There was a ransom note on the table demanding $50,000. Christy was gone. Her car was missing too. Crawford had kidnapped Christy from her own home. He forced her into her car and drove away with her. But Crawford made a mistake. He had also written a similar ransom note and left it in his family's attic. When Crawford's family found the note, they knew something was wrong. They feared Crawford might kidnap someone because of his upcoming trial. Crawford drove Christy to a secluded barn in the woods. What happened next was horrific. Crawford sexually assaulted Christy. Then he handcuffed her to a pine tree. He stuffed one of his socks in her mouth. Then Crawford stabbed Christy to death. A 20-year-old college student with her whole life ahead of her was taken from life. Crawford later told police he experienced blackouts. He claimed he woke up sitting on a stump in the woods with Christy lying at his feet, handcuffed behind her back, deceased. Crawford admitted he must have taken her life, but could not remember doing so. Police found Christy's body on January 30, 1993. Crawford was arrested and charged with capital offense. His trial happened in 1994. The jury heard about the kidnapping, sexual assault and brutal way Christie was unalived. They also learned about Crawford's previous rape conviction. The jury found Crawford guilty and sentenced him to death. Crawford has been on death row for over 30 years. He has filed many appeals, but the courts have refused to overturn his conviction. In November 2024, Mississippi asked for an execution date to be set. Crawford remains on death row today. This case shows how one person's violence can destroy a young life full of promise and devastate an entire family. David Dickerson was 41 years old in 2011. He lived in Copiah County, Mississippi. He had a 15-year-old daughter with his ex-girlfriend Paula Hamilton. Hamilton was 36 and a mother of 3 children. She lived at 6198 Martinsville Road near Hazlehurst. The relationship between Dickerson and Hamilton had turned toxic. She had filed a stalking complaint against him. They were scheduled to appear in justice court that Tuesday morning. Dickerson could not accept that their relationship was over. Instead of going to court, Dickerson rode his motorcycle to Hamilton's home. He brought a firearm, a knife, and gasoline. Hamilton was alone when he arrived. Dickerson attacked her with extreme violence. He shot her numerous times. He stabbed her repeatedly and cut her throat. Then he poured gasoline on her body and set her on fire. The house caught fire too. Sheriff Harold Jones and his deputies found Hamilton's body inside the burning home. Evidence pointed to Dickerson immediately. His motorcycle had been seen in the area. He was arrested quickly and charged with capital offense, arson, and armed robbery. The trial took place in 2012 in Copiah County Circuit Court. Prosecutors showed Dickerson had planned the attack. He chose violence over court. He brought weapons and gasoline. The prosecution described the brutal details of how he shot, stabbed, and burned Hamilton. Dickerson's defense team argued he suffered from mental health issues. They mentioned anxiety, paranoia, and childhood abuse. They hoped to avoid the death penalty. The jury found Dickerson guilty on all charges. During the penalty phase, they considered the brutal nature of the offense and that Hamilton was a mother of 3 children. On February 19, 2013, after 2 hours of deliberation, the jury sentenced David Dickerson to death for the capital offense. He also received 20 years for arson and 40 years for armed robbery. Dickerson was sent to Mississippi State Penitentiary. His lawyers filed multiple appeals over the years. In 2015, 2021, the Mississippi Supreme Court denied his appeals and affirmed his conviction. Paula Hamilton's 3 children lost their mother to senseless violence. A 15-year-old girl lost both parents, her mother to death and her father to his own violent choices. This case shows how domestic disputes can turn deadly. Hamilton tried to protect herself by filing legal complaints, but Dickerson's obsession led him to destroy multiple lives. Today, Dickerson sits in his cell, having lost his freedom, his daughter, and his future because of his violent choices on that morning in 2011. Robert Simon Jr. was 24 years old in 1990. He lived in Quitman County, Mississippi. On June 1, 1990, he would make choices that destroyed an entire family. The Parker family lived peacefully in Quitman County. Carr Parker was 31. His wife Bobby Jo Parker was 28. Their son Gregory was 12. Their daughter Charlotte was 9 years old. Simon had a partner named Anthony Carr. On that Friday night, they decided to break into the Parker home to steal money and valuables. The family was sleeping when the 2 men broke in. What started as a robbery became something much worse. Simon and Carr found the family inside. They tied up Carl and Bobby Jo Parker. They terrorized the children. Simon sexually assaulted 9-year-old Charlotte Parker. Simon decided the family could not be left alive as witnesses. One by one, he caused the death of each family member. He unalived Carr Parker. He unalived Bobby Jo Parker. He unalived 12-year-old Gregory Parker. Finally, he unalived 9-year-old Charlotte Parker. After assaulting her, Simon and Carr set the house on fire to destroy evidence. Emergency responders found 4 deceased individuals when they entered the burned home. The investigation began immediately. Evidence quickly pointed to Simon and Carr. Witnesses had seen them in the area. Physical evidence tied them to the scene. Both men were arrested within days. Simon faced multiple charges, including capital offense for each family member, sexual battery, kidnapping and arson. The trial presented overwhelming evidence. Crime scene photos, forensic evidence, and witness testimony proved his guilt. The jury found Simon guilty on all charges. They considered the horrible nature of his offenses, the sexual assault of a child, and systematic violence against 4 innocent people. Robert Simon Jr. was sentenced to death for the capital offenses. He also received life in correctional facility, plus 30 years for other charges. He was sent to Mississippi State Penitentiary. Multiple appeals followed over the years. The Mississippi Supreme Court upheld his conviction and death sentence repeatedly. Federal courts also confirmed the verdict. The Parker family was gone forever. Carl and Bobby Joe would never see their children grow up. Gregory would never reach 13. Charlotte would never recover from her trauma. Robert Simon Jr. sits in his cell today, decades later. His violent choices that night in 1990 cost 4 people their lives. He traded his freedom for 1 night of violence, theft, and senseless brutality against an innocent family.